Head to kongos.com/podcast to follow along with today's episode, and make sure that you're subscribing on Apple, Google, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Front Lounge with KONGOS. Today we have a special guest. His name is Moe Gordon. He's one of our oldest friends and also our longest standing crew member.
I am the longest standing crew member.
Yes.
Yes.
Did I say one of? No, I think I said you
I
were
might
the
have
longest.
mixed up two sentences there.
All right. Well, anyway, Moe Gordon, Morley Simon Gordon, is with us right now in the Front Lounge.
Good to be here.
So, how long have we known each other?
Over 15 years? Something like that. Since 2003?
Yeah.
Something like
Right
that.
before we graduated high school.
So what, you and Dylan were friends in high school?
Yeah, we had mutual friends because Mo went to like a rival high school and he was friends with all of
Better high school.
my friends from high school, and then that's how we got to know each other.
And we've been doing music together at least since, 2008, 7 or 8 or something like that.
Yeah, 2006, 7, 8. 6 was that what was that?
The Real Bar.
The Real Bar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the
Gadger.
That was the first show I think we did together, and you did a set, Adam Panic did a set,
Yeah.
we did a set, and then we all came up and we played Come Together. So that's how long we've been playing that song, Come Together.
Yeah, but we
with
did
Mo.
it totally differently back then.
Yep.
And Mo also had a really cool ponytail.
He's yeah.
We'll put a picture up of
Man
that.
bun.
So Mo now is known as Mo pretty much to everyone. A lot of you guys who come out on tour or have come to see a show know him as the VIP host. He does our stage managing. What else? He's a handyman. He fixes all sorts of stuff on the road. He's a carpenter. Yeah. Mick, our tour manager, likes to call him a vibe merchant because he keeps morale on the road at a very high level, no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
And
at the sacrifice of myself most times.
Yeah.
Yeah, his self-deprecation immediately gets everyone thinking, "Oh, he's a nice guy. He makes fun of himself."
Everyone calls him Mo, but your stage name at one point was Mozart. So just let us know how did that arise, and then how did it change, and what were some
the rise and fall of Mozart.
what was the rise and fall of Mozart?
Well, it was Moe's Art. It was a play on words, if you didn't get it. But it was hard to come up with a name to go by.
Yeah, I
Not
remember,
for you guys, but
we had how many hours of discussion about changing our name when nothing was going right. We couldn't get anything going. We literally talked for 2-3 hours, days on, is it our name? Is our name fucking us over?
Definitely.
And we almost changed it, but luckily got talked out of it.
But how did you spell Mozart?
So that's exactly, and that's the fall of Mozart, was how I spelled it, because being on stage and trying to get people to find me online, I'll blame it on the spelling, that no one found me online, but it was MOE apostrophe Z space ART. Mozart.
Yeah. Mozart, yeah.
We had a lot of,
Z.
when you were contemplating changing your name, we had a lot of discussions on the bus,
Yeah.
And we all kind of agreed at some point, that Moe Gordon is a strong name. It's, it's a name, but it sounds like a stage name also, and it's short, strong, easy to Google.
Yeah, Moe Gordon.
Yeah, I even remember being on stage trying to announce you after when you were Mozart and be like, "This is our friend Mozart. He goes by Morley. He's Morley, but he goes by Moe Gordon, and he's and find him online." It was confusing even for us, and we were trying to help you out and be like, check this guy out.
Yeah,
impossible.
But wasn't there also a moment, a specific moment that also kind of triggered the downfall of the name?
Well, he is Mozart.
But I'm remembering you were on stage one night and someone shouted something out at you.
Oh, well, this wasn't really an epiphany. I just knew things happen. I mean, people are named certain things. What's a funny name? Annie Fanny.
Yeah.
Kids deal with this. If it rhymes, it's not necessarily true, but I had a show, and it wasn't the best turnout, and which happens, on a ground level. And one guy in the audience that was there, he was actually another artist that was performing. I go, "Hey, my name's Mozart." I was on stage introducing myself, and he just yells "Mofart." And it cuts me off and yells "Mofart," and he definitely cut me off, even though I had a microphone. It was quiet enough in there. Yeah, I was heckled by the only other person in the audience.
Mofart, one heckling.
Yeah, he goes "Mofart."
Where was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's called the Axe now, but shoot, I don't even know what they named it. Yeah, it didn't have a liquor license. It was an up-and-coming spot. We'll call it that. We'll go with that.
That's now it's a down-and-going spot.
We played a few clubs with no liquor license, and it's one of the worst things. Albuquerque.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a beer, but you could go outside and get some meth.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one where we did a gig with Moe? We were on tour with this band from South Africa called Stealing Love Jones. We did 3 or 4 dates with them, and Moe was with us. And I think this may have been when you had your broken leg.
This was the LA shows.
Yeah, in West LA. And that was one of those places that was in between having a liquor license, so they were serving everything, but it was watered down. And they were telling you it was watered down. So you'd order a shot of tequila, and it was like half water, half tequila. Do you remember that?
It wasn't the Good Hurt, was it?
Yeah, Club Good Hurt.
In Venice, yeah.
Oh, wait. Yeah, why was that happening? I thought you were talking about Salt Lake City.
No.
This was Los Angeles.
Yeah, they were LA. I don't know why. They were just serving drinks, and they were clearly watered down.
Yeah. It was a tequila-flavored drink.
Yeah.
But Moe had a broken leg because Moe is really into BMXing. He was a very good BMXer. We'll throw some photos up of his.
Still not too bad.
Yeah. We'll throw some photos up on the website. But yeah, you'd broken your leg, and I remember you were doing shows with us in the wheelchair a couple times.
In the wheelchair, and then we did, the Viper Room show, and the Good Hurt, and the On the Rocks, which is above the Roxy.
Yeah, this is all 2011 or
no, that was 2007, 8,
something
7,
like
8.
That. Oh, that on the Rocks gig is still in my mind. One of the times where I thought, we could have just died in the most ridiculous way, because we used to carry a mixer with us, a Yamaha 01V96, and it was in a big case, and the stairs up the side to get to On the Rocks are 35 narrow wood stairs that are creaky, and I just remember lifting that with you and my dad and thinking, we're going to fucking fall off this thing and die. Like, no-name band dies outside the Roxy.
We might have sold some records after that.
Yeah.
Why don't we run through a little quick sort of schedule of what you've done for us over the years. So you're a rapper, songwriter, performer, and we just started collaborating for fun on shows and doing a song here and there together. And then we started kind of touring, and we couldn't really afford a crew, so we went through our list of friends to see who would want to come out on the road with us. It was our dad, and we had a little bit of money for one more guy.
Yeah, not at first. Yeah, not at first. I think the first was just pure experience points.
Yeah, the very first tour he was selling his merch and
helping you load in.
So he just.
Oh, we didn't. So we didn't pay you at all in the first one.
No, we pulled the
snacks.
This is for your experience and exposure trick.
Well, snacks, and I did capitalize on snacks.
Oh yeah, we had free unlimited snacks in the van.
I think at the time you were also at college in the music program or something, and we were trying to maybe figure out a way to give you credit, school credit for it.
Well, yeah, I had just applied for school again. I quit my job of 5 years at Boys and Girls Club, and decided to do things for myself for once. And applied for school, tried to get my bachelor's, and it was a month before school started, and you guys called, and I was doing a couple prerequisites at the time, but I did them for a couple months on the road. It was just too difficult, and
trying to do correspondence course while you're touring. So you started out doing merch for us. You would help with the gear. You would do a song or two with us, and basically all around help on every job on the road. We all did every job, and then over the years, as we added more crew, you sort of transitioned to doing mostly stage work. Mick our Scottish tour manager came on, and he's sort of a
Father.
father figure for the rest of the crew, an expert in all things touring, and he pretty much trained you to be a stage manager.
Yeah.
And now you, like you said,
Burned me at the stake.
Man of many hats.
Yeah, no, I'm super grateful for being tossed into the flames.
Yeah, it was a true baptism by fire.
Yeah.
Especially that first 2014 Kings of Leon tour, where it was like all of a sudden we went from playing basically to nobody and or small venues to now you're on an arena stage. Everyone figures shit out. And Mick was the only one that really knew what was going on.
And it went from you guys being my next chain in command to Mick being the next chain in command and me going to him with questions and stuff like that. And he was a great teacher, but he was hard as nails.
I think it took him a while to realize how important you are to our crew, because he knew that we were friends with you, and I'm sure he's worked in a lot of situations where the band's got their friend out on tour, and that friend's not doing a good job, and you got to deal with that whole dynamic. And so I think he did definitely think like, I'm having to train this guy from the ground up. Like, why don't we have a proper stage manager or crew tech or whatever? Obviously now you guys are great friends, and it's all
world class. I've been told.
You're a world class stage manager.
Sure,
you are.
Yeah,
you've stage managed all over the world and got the job done. I think that qualifies
in a classy way.
In a classy way.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what
I mean that is. It's not. It's worth saying, and you can't really overstate it. Is that a lot of the reason our crew and the band get such a positive response from venues and other crews is because of Moe, and I think Mick and everyone else learned that along the way. Not that they didn't have that same rapport as well, but Moe is kind of a special character.
Well, yeah, we were talking with Garen about this last week / yesterday when we recorded it, about how important that is, and we said that tell us, have you ever met any local crew that have actually just been difficult? Because we were saying if there's a problem with a local crew, we know it's them, because there's no way anyone ever doesn't get along with you.
Yeah.
Or has defeated your spirit?
Defeated my spirit, no. I've learned to build a bubble around myself, and just be happy and be myself, because it's just...
It's not worth the...
Yeah, it's not worth trying to, like, acclimate to... Just be myself. So anyway, no one really, I mean, stuck out as you get the occasional hand where they don't know how to wrap a cable, or sometimes the crew will be kind of supplemented by security guards or something like that. So they have no clue what's going on. So you really need to kind of keep an eye on them. You can't tell them to just, break down drums, because they will take it all apart. Literally all your stands apart.
Well, we won't mention any names or venues, but there was a place in Portland when this is the very early days where
we won't bring up Kathy.
Kathy, one of her fake names. There was just this person that was there that was so unbelievably negative that even Moe was just like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
she was late. We got there for load, and she was way late. She shows up, Moe goes, hey, how's it going? I'm Moe Gordon. He goes, I'm fucking tired.
She goes, I'm fucking tired, and just walked away. Yeah.
First words out of her mouth, Moe just...
I believe it
was. That was it. That's exactly it, Daniel.
Yeah. First words out of her mouth when Moe greets her. Hey, how you doing? I'm tired as fuck.
Everything just went downhill from there. That entire night it colored our perception of Portland for a good year or two.
And there's one, it's not a person, but London broke your spirit.
London did break my spirit.
Yeah.
We were staying in Hyde Park there.
Broke hard, though, like, with no warning. It was... Mo, 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 and then negative Mo yelling at a little old lady in a red coat in the street for crossing at a crosswalk. Yeah.
She should have been there. Out of the road! Who's walking in this weather? You can't be...
So, I mean, that was after 3 or 4 weeks of just basically not seeing the sun.
Right.
And there's something about that gets to you, and that one got to you. I remember the funniest thing I remember is you, and correct me on this story, but you had put a map of America.
I was craving just a map of America, some Wi-Fi, just something to
Coin laundry.
something just to get me through, because everything was so difficult. You had to pay to go to the bathroom. I felt like I don't think you actually did, but
Yeah, you
there were
did
a
in
couple
Europe.
of- yeah.
in Europe, yeah, you had to. I feel like you had to pay 3 times in the subway, and
Yeah, the London Tube is more expensive. Like if you're used to New York or that, it is way more expensive.
I also think we were not understanding the zones properly. We didn't read
Right.
the instructions. Yeah.
absolutely, buses I think would have been easier actually than the,
buses
tube.
the buses were filled with vomit at 3 in the morning. That's what I remember.
Well, yeah, to paint the picture, we went on tour with this band called Dispatch, a really cool band that took us out of support in Europe. So it was mostly Germany and Netherlands and all these places. In the middle of winter, we literally didn't see the sun. We counted for 3 weeks. We did not see the sun. It was just clouds and snow.
A lot of snow.
And then we finished up that tour, and we had a little gap in London before we went out supporting AWOL Nation, who was also one of the first big bands to kind of ever take us out of support. So we had 5 days to kill in London, something like that, and it was just depressing. Rain didn't stop raining. Shitty weather is expensive as shit. People
we were living off
know,
of eggs,
yeah.
Oh,
rotating, sleeping on a bed because
Yes.
there weren't enough rooms. We were sleeping. 2 of us were sleeping on the floor. 1 of us was in a bed. Me, Danny, and Dylan were sharing a room. Oh man, it smelled like there was a gas leak.
yeah.
There was a gas leak.
That's the
There's
tour.
3 of them.
That was
The tour where I learned how to drive stick or manual.
Yeah,
I
I
had
remember that
never
vividly,
driven
too.
manual in my life. We got there and we had a Sprinter van or VW version of that with bald tires. And there had just been one of the biggest blizzards in Munich, and I'm trying to learn how to drive manual in the ice.
Yeah.
It was fucking ridiculous.
Those type of things, though, stand out in your memory almost more than anything else, because the sharing that room and rotating the bed, because we didn't have a bed for the floor. It was just we piled up, the extra set of blankets, and then to save money, we went to the is it Sainsbury, the little market across the street, and just bought eggs, and there was a little stove, so we in the room and just boiled eggs and put packets of salt on them for breakfast.
With like English muffins, and we would go to that Phoenicia.
Oh yeah. Lebanese restaurant.
Yeah, that Lebanese restaurant. Get a quartered chicken.
So we went there 5 or 6 times. Eventually, the waiter said to you, "Could you please order something else?" Because you kept getting the falafel, and he knew most of us were vegetarian at the time. So he was like, "Okay, fine, that's what they're going to order."
Why do you
But
get
you
this?
weren't vegetarian. He's like, "Try the chicken. Try this. Like, stop ordering the freaking falafel."
I forgot that's how it happened. And I got a full. He gave me a splayed chicken, and with fries, and I ate it all. But I was definitely pressured into that.
Yeah. So part of this breaking news segment, we'll get up to what we've been up to lately. Not just on the road or music related, but in a personal way. And Danny and I just played golf today with Garen, and for some reason, Danny decided to place bets. He wanted to play skins with Garen, and Garen's a scratch golfer. At one point he was a scratch golfer, and Danny and I Danny and I shoot 3 figures. so we lost a lot of money to Garen today. It was actually...
He did buy
did
you
he
lunch,
do?
though, so that was nice.
Yeah, he
That
bought
was
us
nice.
lunch.
Garen?
Yeah.
He didn't actually play that well today. He was... he shot 16 over.
A little pressure,
Yeah.
cracks.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's terrible
So that's what
As a
we've been
person?
up to, but...
As a golfer,
person.
That's what we've been up to. But Mo, what have you been doing while you've been home? And because we haven't been touring that much this summer, we've been doing 2 shows a month, kind of weekend warrior stuff, going out, fly gigs. You've been working on all your a new project, right? Furniture and everything.
yeah. So I started. So my girlfriend moved to Phoenix in January, and we combined our lives. And
Tell us a little bit about her. Like, where did you meet her?
I met her in Philadelphia. Her name's Mara. I mean, I was just debated not saying her name for a second, but
I'm sure
matter?
Jam and Jesse has said her name several times on. She's good friends with Jam and Jesse, who we met is a DJ on 104.5 in Philly.
B-Day Radio. Is that right? Birthday Radio? No, it's
Something like that, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. KW69321. I don't know.
6'9". Yeah.
So yeah, we met on the road because we did an interview with Jam and Jesse, and she'd brought a friend along. That's where you met Mara, 3 years ago?
Yeah, so I met her on the road, and I'm going to try to sum it up as quick as possible, but we left each other that first time without exchanging any information, but we hung out that night, no details, and I know you're wondering it, but so
I wasn't actually.
Yeah, of course not. But we hung out that night. We left each other without any contacts exchanged, and we saw each other a couple other times. Still, kind of no contacts exchanged.
Each time we came back to Philly, yeah.
Yeah, every time we came back to Philly, and you guys went to New York one time, or you guys went to Philly, and I went to New York and met you guys in Philly, and I was visiting a friend there. And she was drunk and she asked for my number. She asked you guys for my number. Yeah. She pursued me. Yeah, me too.
And so now, how you guys did long distance for 2 years, right?
We did long distance 2 years, and then this third year was January 2017, and she moved all of her crap out in 11 boxes. So, yeah, so.
So how's that been going?
You're still together.
Yeah, and we're still together.
What's
in
it
the
like?
same house.
So you're living with a girl.
I'm living with a girl.
How's it going?
It's very much the same as living with a man. I've had both roommates, men and women. And, it's pretty much the same. I think, actually, I definitely enjoy it a lot more having Mara. She cooks, and we switch off, cooking and cleaning.
Does she cook?
She microwaves eggs.
Because we've given you a lot of shit about the food that she's cooked for you.
She did a vegetarian chili last week, and she's making it today as well. And it's the best chili I've ever had. Huh. So
she can't cook. She was faking it those first few.
She can't cook. She's just tired. She works such long days. I feel for her. I really do. But
better than Ashley's chili?
Ashley's chili?
Yeah.
I don't even remember her chili.
Dude.
I'm just kidding. No, that was good chili.
Fight.
It was good chili, too. I don't think I actually had any.
Yeah, I know. You probably didn't. It's very offensive.
I know. I'm sorry.
So anyway, you've been living with a girl, and then but you've also been working on this.
Living with Mar, yeah.
No, it's just funny to think about because you always keep coming to us and telling us funny stories about now having your girlfriend living with you, all the typical silly things that people figure out when they start living with their significant other. But you've also been working on making furniture.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
So Mara moved, and we were forced to combine lives, which made us realize that I did not have enough storage space, closet space, and nightstands, that stuff that I guess you grow up and
you need when a girl moves in, you need furniture, not just a futon.
Throw shit on the futon.
The futons. So I had two futons, which is not funny. I mean, they weren't cigarette burned, smelled like bong water type of futons. They were very well kept. And nice frames that folded down to full-size beds. And I was renting my house out on Airbnb, so they were very practical. But I got rid of those. Anyway, I built this closet for myself because there was only one closet in the master. And, I let her have all of that because she has more stuff to hang and whatnot. Yeah. All my stuff can be folded and stuffed in a cube.
Yeah, into a suitcase. You can live out of a suitcase pretty much like us.
Which I tried to pull off. I actually did in 2016. I pretty much lived out of my suitcase at my parents' house and just rented out my house.
Just didn't unpack because we were on the road so much.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you made?
First thing I made was I would call it, it's like a closet. It's a closet dresser armoire sort of thing. It's got some hanger rails and shelves and belt holder, tie holders for all my ties.
But now it's turned into a bit of a business. Now you're picking up work and carpentry work as well as making custom furniture and stuff. We'll throw some pictures up of that stuff.
It's called Moe's Art Furniture, right?
I actually don't know. I actually came up with the headless craftsman the other day.
I'm gonna veto that.
Okay, well, just putting it out there. No bad ideas in brainstorming, except for maybe that one. But Moe Gordon woodwork. I don't know. Just to keep synonymous with
I don't know. Yeah, we've talked about trying to come up with a name. I forget what it.
I think it should be, what kind of wood is that?
Got wood.
What would?
Every time we've been in any public setting, Mo will ask a stranger, as if they will know, what kind of wood is that? What kind of?
Wood's a very cool thing. It's it's organic. It breathes and had a life, and you can put life back into it, which is kind of cool.
But it's kind of interesting because you always on the road when you started doing obviously odd jobs, like you really kind of went towards build whenever we had stuff that we needed built. You just were so naturally good at it, and it's kind of interesting to see you now trying to build up this furniture business. And I think it's going to be successful, as you keep going. And we'll throw up some pictures of the stuff you've been building. It's really great
I think what
stuff.
you should do is have a website and a name by the time this podcast comes out. We can throw it up on the website.
Just follow me on Instagram, I think. And then when I have a portfolio, which I'm really close to, I have like this ottoman table modular sort of thing that I'm working on. I have the dresser, I have nightstands, I'm working on a bed frame and a coffee table, and I have all these things, and I like to put them in a portfolio, and then I can kind of say, look, these are things that I made custom for my space, small space. Come to me with your ideas. I can make them in any dimension, and I'll kind of like troubleshoot custom woodwork for people, even if it's, and that's ideal to make the furniture. That's what I enjoy doing and learning new techniques and making, heirloom furniture. But I think what is going to pay the bills to be able to do that is to do like just trim work and finishing work for, commercial jobs, trimming out a window or a door.
I mean, even in our bunks, you were always the most industrious. Like you'd go look into Moe's bunk on the bus, and there was always like contraptions that he'd built out of wires and
never
hangers.
look at my bunk.
Well, not when you're in there. But I mean, he'd have things so he could hang his cell phone to watch TV in his bunk. He'd always built these things, and that's actually a sub business that you could do is custom
phone hammocks
for buses.
I called it. Yeah, I appreciate the support.
Yeah, we talked about you should have an Etsy profile because that's where people are going to find you and be able to give you money for the stuff that you build. I've bought furniture on Etsy before, and I wish it was from you because you would have gotten the money and would have been better furniture.
I have a feeling we'll have some fans out there that will order something from you, a custom Moe Gordon piece of furniture. I mean, you've got your own, like KONGOS fans on Instagram has got Moe Gordon Monday. They post a picture of you every day on Monday.
Let me know. Screen doors, tables, a custom shelf, of some, what do they call it? Reclaimed? What
reclaimed wood, yeah.
What's that?
It's like it's a buzzword in furniture now. It's reclaimed. Basically, they go and get pallets from the back of a Home Depot. They make furniture out of it and call it reclaimed and charge double.
It's like Bill Burr when he says it's, you got a rescue dog? Yeah. No, you got a free dog.
Yeah, exactly. I've always said that too.
So let's talk about music. Mo, I chose this album because I know it was one of your favorites growing up and was one of mine too. And it was Liquid Swords.
The Jizza Genius.
The Jizza Genius from the Wu-Tang Clan. Mm-hmm. Tell us about
hip-hop.
Tell us about hip-hop and tell us about where you spent 6 of the most important years of your life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so it's in my blood, first of all. You're born from, there's nothing like a Brooklyn boy. I think there's actually a song. Could we put a link up of that?
Yeah, sure.
Nothing like a Brooklyn boy. I'm not sure if you want to listen to it, but it's pretty good. But they get a little flavor being from the neighborhood. And I was always one of my good friends from New York. He always kind of introduced me to hip hop stuff growing up and old kung fu movies, and kind of Jizza Genius has, I think it was like the Shogun Assassin, all these samples like
on that album from old classic kung fu movies.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of got me into Wu-Tang and hip hop at a young age.
It's weird. We were listening to it earlier before we started recording this podcast, and just it's so next level, the lyrics and where they're going in terms of when you just turn on like your average radio hip hop now.
Yeah.
It's so
bad.
Well,
hip hop, it's a little different now. You turn on the radio, you don't really hear rappers or wordsmith. in any way. You kind of hear some guy on pain pills, whether or not he is or not.
Yeah, rhyming the same word with the same word over and over again.
Yeah, but at the same time, it does have a vibe to it, and it has its place in a trash can. But I grew up with
Old school hip-hop.
Yeah, Wu-Tang, and
Tribe Called Quest.
Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and Talib Kweli and Mos Def Black Star, and really MCs who they say something too, which I think is hard to do in music.
At what point did you think in your life, as Moe Gordon from Brooklyn, when did you think I'm going to do hip hop? I'm going to be a rapper?
I don't think I ever thought that. I started making. I've always played guitar. My parents got me a little pawn shop guitar, and I always fiddled around making little melodies and voicing chords. And I I took my parents' karaoke machine and started recording from Napster, downloaded old Wu-Tang and Mobb Deep beats, and I'd record over that onto like a tape. And I was trying to find the tapes the other day.
Do you remember one of your first verses you ever wrote?
Just Pieces of Life. That was like the first song where there was actually like a chorus, and yeah.
We'll throw up some links to that of Moe's music. And I know Dylan played that song with you at a couple shows.
Yeah, at Viper Room on crutches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You were on crutches, not me. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you're listening to this and you've seen us at a show, there's a pretty good chance you've seen Moe jump up and do some verses with us on. We usually try and find a Beatles song or some other cool cover that he can write something over and do our own version of it, because we feel kind of weird sometimes just playing a Beatles song the way that they played it, because number one, it's going to be not as good, and number two, we'd rather change it and make something fun of it so that at least people aren't comparing it exactly to the cover. And some songs we've done are Come Together, Eleanor Rigby. What else have we done where you've done it verse?
Did you say Get Back?
Get Back, yeah.
Did we do Day in the Life at one point?
I don't know if we ever did that together. We used to do Caravan, which is not a Beatles song, but it's like the old classic standard, a weird James Brown Caravan mashup where Moe did a couple verses over that.
Yeah.
Every time we go out on tour, we try and put another one or two of those together. But the Come Together that we've done it kind of works so well that we always end up doing it.
It's like keep it in our back pocket space. if it's a hard crowd or something. Like no one. Very few people have seen that and not gotten into it. People of all musical.
We've
leanings.
worked it out too over the years. I think it's kind of settled in.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when we get to the end of that, if we happen to have sped up too much, and Moe has to do his last verse over that, and he just looks at us like with terrified eyes, like "Fuck, you guys are going way too fast." He's got to.
It's fun. It's a fun exercise. I miss singing with Danny on Come Together when we shared a mic, and I'd smell like chicken wings.
And also, those pictures, the pictures of that.
It was totally fine until you went through that week of salmon.
Yeah.
That
salmon. Was it.
I was like, fucking, my mic smelled like salmon.
The pictures of that also turned out great because Danny's 6'3" almost, and Moe, you're 5. What?
I'm 5 years old. I'm 5'2".
So the pictures were great. Trying to share a mic on that.
Yeah, they were, and Danny's trying to play guitar too, so he has to like lean backwards and towards me while also trying to play guitar.
Yeah.
It's nothing for this guy.
So another thing I wanted to just throw up a link to for this week's music section is this guy called Glenn Gould, who's a piano player in the 60s, I think, 50s, 60s, 70s that he was prevalent.
I think
and
a long time.
Huh?
A long time.
A long time ago.
Yeah. It's not like you blow out a hip being a piano player,
Yeah, that's true.
Long careers.
He's most well known for his performances of Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach's music. And we'll throw up a link particularly to this work called The Art of Fugue. That, for me, is just
companies.
Unparalleled in his performance. It's, for me, my favorites, and I think the best performances of those songs. And they are, we'll throw up a link to the last fugue from this series called The Art of Fugue, which was allegedly the last piece of music that Bach wrote before he died, and it trails off unfinished. And, composers since then have tried to, quote, finish it.
Well, can you explain what a fugue is?
Not really, because it'll make me sound like an idiot.
In layman's terms, you can explain what it is because it's quite interesting.
The basic idea is that you take one theme, one melody, we call a subject, and then that subject is weaved throughout the entire work. In this case, the entire series of 15, 16, 17 fugues are all somehow related to either variations of the main theme, their counter themes, their inversions, retrogrades of that theme. And it's a monumental work in terms of just the composition. It's so mathematical, and it's so complicated to write a fugue that works because there's various rules that it needs to conform to, and then for it also to come out sounding beautiful and musical, which I think a lot of people complain they don't think the Art of Fugue, they think it sounds like a science experiment. But if you listen to Glenn Gould's version, it somehow accomplishes both things, both being beautiful in a kind of subjective musical sense and then also just a marvel of like human thought. So we'll throw up a link to that and just check it out. We'll also throw up a link to an interview with Glenn Gould so you can see how someone that's really eloquent talks, because he has a way with words also.
Yeah, I think it requires a lot of patience to listen to it and to get the full benefit, which you're probably not even getting the full benefit out of it, because most people associate Bach or that type of music with, like we were talking about on one of the last podcasts, is Harkins Theatre or a bathroom at a mall or something like that, because there were that period of classical music tended to be a little bit like that, but the Art of Fugue is on a completely different level. If you listen to it, it's like a mathematically escalating emotion that if you give it the chance, it'll get to you.
Bach was actually a member of a kind of scientific society at the time, and it was rumored that this was going to be one of his presentations to the society.
Contributions?
Yeah, contribution, like a dissertation that he never ended up finishing it, obviously, so it wasn't there, but that was...
Was it the Art of Fugue that Schillinger was analyzing?
I'm not sure if it was that specifically, but he did analyze a lot of his work.
It is very fractal fugue stuff. It's where the different parts represent the whole, which is you can't maybe specifically hear that, but if you listen, you'll hear those relationships.
Yeah, so I mean, there are pieces I've been trying to learn, and probably will be continuing to try to learn for the rest of my life. But having played them, it helps me to hear them, I guess, differently, and it's still just infinitely complex and kind of mind-boggling every time I hear Glenn Gould play them. So we'll throw those links up and check those out. Cool. We'll move on to music business, and we'll start off with a picture I have in my head here at our LA studios. I walked out the back door. This is before the Egomaniac tour, and Moe is scribbling on a piece of cardboard. I walked up to him and said, "What are you doing? What were you doing?"
I was putting my numbers together against Uber's numbers, their year-end statement for my transactions using their app, and they weren't accurate.
You were doing your taxes.
I was doing my
cardboard.
taxes.
So this section of music business, we're going to talk about paperwork and how much paperwork and is involved in touring and just being in a band, because I think that's obviously something.
You're going to talk about it with me?
Yeah.
Well,
Mo just had an aneurysm.
I mean, the first few years on tour where we weren't paying you didn't really have to think about taxes, or because the income was not significant enough to worry about receipts and stuff like that. But then, as we've all started to actually make money from this business, pretty much everything's deductible on the road. I mean, you're traveling; it's part of your work. It's related to your income, so you have to save all the receipts. And It's really kind of boring, but it's obviously worthwhile work. The funny thing about you was we thought like, okay, so he's got however many fucking numbers from 6 months on the road. Think every time you're on the road, you buy a coffee
60?
every day, you buy a meal every day, and you were trying to compile your taxes on a piece of cardboard.
It was just the Uber rides. But I mean, I just wrote a list on a piece of cardboard.
But you had to file how many tax returns last year? Because you have to. Every business that every state that you travel through, you have to file a tax return in that state. Because even though you're getting paid by a company or you're 1099ing, however it works, you're traveling through these states and you have to file a tax return. Yeah. So it gets very complicated very quickly, and sometimes it'll be for like you owe the state of Iowa like $3, but you got to file all the paperwork. So paperwork is one of those things, obviously, that everyone knows just never goes away, and it's everywhere in the touring business. The other thing that we deal with a lot in terms of papers on the road is something called a carnet, which I know Mick has had you fill out at
not ASADA.
Yeah, not carnet ASADA at like 3 a.m. Basically, it's a document you have to go in and out of countries with the customs departments to make sure that you're not trying to sell gear in those countries. You have to keep track of that. And just tell us a little about filling out that form. I don't mean the technical details. Right. Just like at 3 a.m., you got 1,000 serial numbers you have to put into a square that they put on the piece of paperwork.
They give you one line. You're on a bus that's moving, and you're approaching a border. So the sand's going through the hourglass or whatever, and you're just counting the minutes before you have to get to the border. And this guy, either he could seize your equipment if this is not correct.
A mistake.
Yeah. Or if there's something accounted for that's not accounted for on the carnet, it could be all you find a quarter of your.
So in the case of a bus tour, because this goes for fly gigs and like if we fly overseas, you have to, and we carry 20 cases full of equipment. Each item has to be notated on this thing, and
item and its contents, its box,
and its value, and so. On a bus tour or a truck tour, the truck tour, the gear goes through on the trucking company, and we don't have to worry about as much. But in the case of where we've got the gear with us, we must have hundreds, if not thousands, of items that are individually listed. You know, every pedal, every guitar, every cymbal, every snare
coffee
drum,
filter,
And so you got to fill out which ones we have with us and which ones we're taking across the border, and then they go, usually they don't even examine it, but you have to be prepared because sometimes they do. Okay, they say, let me see this and make sure you've got the right piece of gear with the right serial number.
And Mick has this stuff ingrained in his head somehow. He pretty much organized the carnet the way it is, and it's all formatted in his head somehow. But he
asks you to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
One of the funny things is certain countries you go into, because this is basically a global agreed upon way of doing things. And some countries you go into that accept carnets and it's part of their system, you get to the customs agents and they have no fucking clue what they're looking at there. And they're just looking at these papers. So Mick has to explain it to them. And it's a kind of a ridiculous scene where you're stuck in a customs office for 3 hours trying to bring a guitar in, and they're going, well, this number doesn't match here. And Mick's going, yes, it does. Look at it again. Like he has to. It's kind of a funny but annoying scene that we go through every time we're going out of countries.
Mick has to explain a lot of policies. He has to explain the American airline policy to the American Airlines check-in desk, and the carnet policy to the customs offices.
Disparagement purposely to make things difficult. So, in case someone like Mick is someone not like Mick is coming through, they can kind of push him around and just make a few $100 extra bucks. It's kind of nickel and diming
a lot of countries you go into, if they find a mistake, it basically is a way for them to elicit bribes.
Right.
Which
it would be way easier than doing a carnet, right?
So let's move on to our section about nostalgia. And
remember that one time we filled out the carnet?
Yeah, remember?
Oh.
We can start off by talking about Mo has you talk in your sleep a lot.
I've been told that, yes. Yeah.
Well, it's been told to you enough times by enough people that you believe it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I definitely am an active sleeper, active person in life, active dreamer.
Do you remember a couple of the highlights that we've said that you've shouted out?
Yeah, we can. This is not.
Some of them probably are
They're inappropriate.
completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
Give me
They're
your
the
company.
best ones.
Can I say?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Chicago, circa 2013. I think.
Yeah. You can go ahead. Describe this.
You
story.
fucking poo poo.
Yeah. Okay.
Come in a cup.
But describe the.
You got to explain like that's out of it's. How so?
It's
tell us.
no, it's completely out of context. I never.
So where were
Come in a
you?
cup?
You guys were in a hotel. I wasn't there for this one. You were in a hotel room, or you were?
Yes, hotel room. Me and Dylan sleeping in separate beds, ladies, if you're wondering. And I wake up to Dylan cracking up, and I go to the bathroom and I come back and he explains what happened, and he said I woke up and I said.
I was laying in bed,
can't remember.
and I was still on my phone waiting to go to bed, and Moe, in his sleep, just goes, "Oh, real nice, you fucking poo-poo," and then says, "Come in a cup." And that was it, and I almost lost my breath. I almost had, passed out. I was laughing so hard. And then he gets up and he goes to the bathroom. He comes out. He sees me laugh. He's still asleep at this point. He literally sleepwalked to the bathroom, comes out. He sees me laughing. He starts to come to, and he starts laughing. He's like, "What's so funny? Tell me, what are you laughing about?" So I told him. And then that was my first experience with it. And then for the next few years, it happened over and over and over
In
again.
Munich, the first night, I woke up completely nude. And me and Danny were sharing a room, and I was like, I put my underwear on.
No one else had woken up.
No one else had woken up.
I mean,
there were small rooms.
A lot
too.
of this sounds exaggerated, but it's really true. You do it a lot, and
toned
because
down.
we've shared so many hotel rooms, or sleep on a bus. There are multiple verifications of this fact that you do somehow, your dreams or whatever.
Twat balcony?
Yeah, that was in somewhere else in Germany. We were 3 or 4 of us in a room.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, I just hear the some rustling in the bed next to me, and you can hear him sit up. And there was enough moonlight that I could see him sit up, and he just goes twat. Balcony, and then lies back down, goes back to bed. No, no comment about
I've been up on awake on the bus, and Moe sleeps across the aisle above me, and he was literally singing R&B, mumbling R&B in his sleep. He definitely wasn't awake because you could hear him snoring the moments before, and then he was. He was doing that in his sleep.
Yeah, I sleep underneath him, and I've woken up to someone punching the ceiling above me. Also,
that was the first year of stage managing for sure, because my stress dreams were I had very stressful sleeps. Did I miss load in? Oh God, I've slept for 20 minutes, and then I'd wake up terrified. I'd miss load in or something like that, because Mick would put me through the ringer during the day, and then he'd feed me countless amounts of alcohol and somehow I had to wake up the next morning.
Yeah,
I'm not Scottish.
Yeah, it's a very weird, I don't know.
It's a weird sleep.
Initiation routine. You're going to work incredibly difficult hours, and then you're like, here, drink all this vodka.
Yes,
and then wake
exactly.
up at 7 and then do it again.
Yeah. I've learned not to do that.
Can you recollect anything when you wake up and you come to, or are you conscious at all?
Sometimes. Singing R&B? No. Twat balcony? No. Electric tank top? I feel like maybe there was a...
No, we just talked about it.
Yeah, the selfish...
But you've a couple times with Mara, you said, Mara, you've slept, walked, or talked, or thrown a pillow across the room or something like that?
I've thrown a couple pillows since we've been living together. I actually threw a pillow in Taos, too, and broke a glass. And, sorry, at the lodge there, but... Yeah, sometimes I remember, and sometimes it's very interactive where I feel awake. This goes into a whole, lucid dreaming section, but of this topic. But yeah, I think I might have seen Mara's grandfather over her one night, and because I described the man to her that I saw him over her, and he was smiling. He had like a little, like kind of newsy hat on. He was a dark guy. He almost looked Indian, darker skin and plaid shirt, and it was very specific. And I told Mara this, and she said, "It sounds like my grandfather, Bill, or her dad's dad."
Was this the same time
Have
that
you
you
met her grandfather?
No, he's passed.
He's
passed. No, yeah. So I threw practically my whole bed at this big housekeeping woman in South Africa.
Not in a real
An
house.
imaginary.
In a real. Right, correct. Yes, she was not actually. I wasn't throwing bedding at a housekeeper, clean my sheets, but it was out of fear, or it's something that happens in between sleep and being awake. That it's like a reaction to kind of like give myself a head start to run or something, to throw something.
There was meant to be there was an old couple. There was rumored to have been the ghosts at our house in South Africa, our parents' house in South Africa. There was always a rumor of these ghosts. I never saw them. Moe saw them first night.
Yeah, it was the first or second night.
It freaked me out because, when someone tells you there's a ghost story, like, yeah, of course, bullshit. And then Moe comes down the next morning and says he had a fight with a...
But I do feel like you've got some unusual stories of that nature, more than most people I've met.
Yeah.
And you do seem like a sensitive type, not in the typical way, but sensitive to...
paranormal activity.
Yeah, and also to people's vibrations. I feel like you're very sensitive to people's whatever emanations come from a person, whatever their, maybe it's just their body language that your subconscious is picking up on or whatever.
I think we all are pretty sensitive. We just don't
listen to it.
Yeah, choose to care.
Yeah, I have to reconcile the fact that I recognize that you do have those perceptions, and then you'll also dream and wake, say something like, it's a selfish thing I do, it's an electric tank top. Yeah. So the two,
there's
deciphering
there's
it
truth
into
somewhere
English
in there.
is hard.
Well, yeah,
that's just interesting, I think.
Can you do you know what was going through your head when Mara woke up with you above her when you were headbanging?
Yeah, there's probably nothing significant happening.
You said you woke up and your neck was hurting, and she's like, "Yeah, you were headbanging all night."
Yeah, so
remember what you were listening was like Pantera or something?
Yeah, so hip hop was definitely a big part of me. I was a big punk rock kid, metal kid too. So maybe it just came out that night. We were at a wedding and we were staying in a hotel, and I guess I woke up and I was rubbing my neck. I was like, I cannot move my neck. My neck is so stiff, and so I did also run headfirst into a wall that previous night, and Mara said I was headbang. She opened her eyes to me, with my arms on each side of her, kind of like kneeling over her, and I was headbanging aggressively for God knows how long.
Enough for her to get a camera out and call her friends, probably.
Yeah, or call her, police. So yeah, I do weird shit, and sometimes it has significance, and I can draw almost immediately, and sometimes it clearly has zero significance. Mm-hmm. The Bruce Lee thing. I mean, we could have a whole segment on the journeys beyond the body.
Yeah, that's a book. Yeah,
that is a book.
It gives you techniques for lucid dreaming, right?
Yeah,
I think they mentioned it in that movie, Waking Life.
Tell us that
movie.
Tell us the Bruce Lee, quick version of that Bruce Lee story, because that one is actually quite weird and interesting.
Yeah. So Vancouver. What was the name of the theater?
The Imperial
Lounge. Did they call it, or Imperial?
No, just the
Theater.
Imperial. It's an old. It was previously a theater.
Previously
in
a
Chinatown,
theater.
right?
So movie theater.
So I'm gonna dive. I'll say the dream first. I woke up on the bus. I haven't seen outside what the theater looked like or anything like that. I didn't look up the theater the night before, except on Master Tour, saying stage dimensions and quick drawing of the main room. And I think I grabbed you or Joe, and I told you this dream about Bruce Lee and how it was very vivid, and I ended up fighting Bruce Lee. It was like, not to kill or anything like that, but it was like sparring him and fighting him in sport, and I was in his house and with all the mirrors. Remember Enter the Dragon, that part where all the mirrors, the guy with the claw?
Yeah.
And it was kind of that scene, and he ended up he ended up saying something very profound that I never could recall. I wasn't sleep. You don't sleep very deeply in the bus. I've learned to sleep pretty deeply now, but I was having this really intense dream. He reached into my heart. He reached into my body, and I could see his face next to my heart, and he grabbed my heart, and he was squeezing it, and he was saying something very profound. I woke up. I tell this story to Dylan or Joe, whoever. Go into the venue, load in, set up, hang the banner, sound check, come out, and there's all these in the front lounge near the bar. There's all this kung fu memorabilia, old kung fu posters and stuff like that for old movies. And the guy says that Bruce Lee was a former owner of the theater, and he used to run a theater for at-risk youth that would come there after school and watch old kung fu movies. What the hell?
Yeah,
that's pretty intense.
When I heard that, I don't think I heard that story until like a year later, wherever we went back and played that venue for a second time. So then I heard the story, and
that was last year. Yeah.
I mean, when you roll up on, we were probably outside when you were dreaming, because a lot of times we get there to the venue while we're still asleep. I don't have an explanation for it. It's either a very strange coincidence, because we did not discuss the venue. Nobody on the bus discussed the venue. Nobody knew that it was Bruce Lee had owned it.
Yeah, there was one guy in the theater who knew, and I had to dig online to actually, because I wanted to verify it, and I had to dig. A page or two into the Google searches for Imperial Theater to find out previous owners and what they were.
This kind of story never appeals to me naturally, Yeah. But you told me the dream as soon as you woke up on the bus, and then one of the guys in the venue told me that Bruce Lee owned it, so my hair stood on end. Yeah. And then I was like Moe's not gonna fucking believe this shit.
Yeah.
It's a very weird.
I don't think you're cunning enough to concoct this to try and fuck with us.
I wouldn't do
That's
it.
not what I mean. I just mean that you can
though.
If you're one of those people, you'll see coincidence and everything. But this was clearly a bizarre coincidence.
I mean, who knows? Bruce Lee was a master of many sorts, and maybe you interacted with his astral body or something like that.
His energy's everywhere. I believe that your energy is kind of dispersed and can kind of be tapped into. No matter where you are. And our physical bodies kind of give us that definition of place and in space. But I think that we are kind of sharing the same energy, and we can kind of tie into that somehow. I don't know how, but I think it happens to all of us. And there's, got to be people who focus on it a bunch or something.
Well, you've had enough vivid experiences to kind of believe that for yourself. I think it's up to other people to have experience to even open themselves up to the question. I think once you have an experience like that, then all sorts of possibilities open up to you, and then it's a matter of trying to verify them or validate them, scientifically or whatever.
We were just talking about this idea of how you verify something, and obviously. The scientific method and so-called objectivity has an enormous place, and you can see its products all around you and the advancement of humanity through that method of thinking. But if you think in literal terms about how you prove a personal experience to another person, there's no way to do it, right? Like, you dream, I know I dream, everybody knows they dream. You can't prove your dreams to anybody. You can measure brainwaves on an EEG machine, but so there's that fundamental problem of a subjective experience, which you can't give to anybody else.
I think that's what's so powerful about it, is you can't take away someone's experience or perspective, and you just you have to either accept it or dismiss it. And that gives the actual, observer or person who's experiencing it, I think it creates something quantum. I think that's the right word, that you can't really, no one else can, it gives.
Mo just looked at me like he was going to try and tag out in a wrestling match.
I think that defines the problem exactly, is that you're trying to put some experience into language that is impossible to put certain experiences into language.
Well, also you're trying to convey it to somebody else. So this question of our own, trying to translate our own subjective experiences. All we can do is relate to each other and say, that sounds like something I've experienced.
Right.
And through language and other forms of communication, we can kind of agree that, okay, these things do seem to be happening. They seem to be common experiences. And then it's these anomalies, these weird ones where the sort of distrust starts to come up and say, well, I don't believe that. You know, you were either high or you were this or that, and it's hallucination, or you're just fucking lying. And how you bridge those experiences, how you decipher whether it's true or not, or whether you believe it or not, it's not easy, and there has to be a measure of sincerity from the people discussing it. But you know, believe it or not, to the listeners, like, we've spent so much time with Moe that some of these experiences seem to be fucking real.
I mean, but that, as far as stories go, these is not even close to the craziest experiences that people have, and people are being sincere. There's millions of people with what they would describe as out of the ordinary experiences, and they're not being insincere. Whether or not they were confused, and whether or not it was their imagination, probably a lot of the time, yes, because your imagination is always underestimated.
Your imagination itself, it doesn't. Even if it is just that, it's still interesting. You know,
how do you know that you're not perpetually involving your imagination in your life?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
You probably are.
We need to start a tip jar every time we get into a subjectivity, objectivity discussion. Everyone has to put $5 in the jar. We'll be millionaires by the end of this podcast season.
You could buy a lot of objects with that.
But I think listening to someone else's experience, it's essential to have both impulses to reject and accept. You know, those have to exist inside you to decipher for yourself whether something might be real, and that might only be through experience that you can come to a conclusion that something is real or not. But listening to someone else's story, you can't automatically just accept something or automatically reject it either. So
and all that I do is I accept that Moe is being sincere about it, you know, and so that's a big part of it, because my natural bent is like dismissal. Like I always want to dismiss everything. You know, that's just naturally how I'm programmed for whatever reason. And
which is an important part of the world.
Because I can tell you're being sincere and you're not full of shit, and you're like, you're not cunning like that Jesse was saying there, or trying, you know.
I'm not like some new agey guy. And with
also,
parachute pants.
you're not like right. You're not always seeking out like a fucking vortex in Sedona or namasteing unnecessarily like that, because you're not that kind of person. It's opened my perception of paranormal, if that's what you want to call them, experiences up a little bit, because I see like, oh, you know, my experience is one experience, and here's another sincere person who's had different experiences, and I can't fully dismiss this person.
Yeah, I think the purpose of these experiences are almost not to be proved. It's almost like you know, the proof of, you know, a deity, or why we're here on Earth, or, you know, any of these deep questions. It's like these things will always give us purpose and some sort of significance in life, because we can't explain them.
The question remains always, and that maybe that's part of the point.
Maybe
that it remains a question, or
I think to play on your statement about proof, I think if you accept the current scientific definition of proof, which has, you know, certain requirements in the scientific community,
right?
Yes, maybe it will never be proved in that sense.
Right.
You know, you have to have sometimes a broader definition of proof, and what constitutes proof, and that's a discussion in itself. But I think you're right in that quality of proving is maybe not useful in these matters. You know, you have to enter a different part of your brain.
Yeah, and I would say also that
Let's come back to deep thoughts. I think because the namaste statement made me think of something that I want to discuss on deep thoughts. Even though this has pretty much been a long deep thought section.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, I would like to say that I think at one point I was a person that, you know, had an inclination for positivity and purpose, and looked for those things in life, maybe went out of my way to look for those sort of things, you know.
And then we beat that out of you, yeah.
Well, I just think
London
that
beat it out of him.
Yeah.
I think that maybe. So I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go about it. You have to have both sides, like you said, to accept and reject, and question these things as they come in. But I think putting yourself blindly open to something also opens you up to things that you might not, necessarily.
Yeah, going down the wrong path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's come. We'll continue this in a minute. Some more deep thinking, but. Mo, let's talk about gear. What is something on the road that you cannot live without? It could be anything.
I see Leatherman on the screen there.
No, you don't have to say. I wrote.
No,
I wrote
definitely.
I wrote down
would
Leatherman
say.
in our notes, but if is there something else, by all means.
I think the Leatherman is actually a perfect piece of gear that I use in my everyday life on tour, for sure. It has pliers, it has scissors, I cut my fingernails, tighten a screw, stuff like that. I mean, it changes guitar strings
I didn't
with
know
it.
what a Leatherman was because we grew up in Europe.
Yeah.
And South Africa, where Swiss Army knives were
Right.
you could open a bottle of wine and
Both good.
defend yourself against a banana with them. But then I think it was through you that I found out what a Leatherman was. I mean, it makes me sound very unmanly. I realize that, but it's like a multi-tool, right? That kind of fans out and it's got different stuff in it.
Yeah.
The Gerber makes one.
Yeah, Gerber makes one. Swiss Army makes one as well.
How many of you
The
lost?
Leatherman's the
How
best
many of
one.
you lost to the TSA?
I've had, I think, 2 seized, and Danny was actually nice enough to give me his Leatherman, which was identical to the one that I had just lost at the time. And so now I have that one, but I've lost 2 to TSA, which is very upsetting.
That kind of explains how important it is on tour because it lives on you,
Yeah.
or your backpack, and then you just forget every time you go onto a plane. And the TSA probably has 600 or 700 million.
That was a very selfish gift on my part because I knew that it would end up benefiting me.
Yeah,
Because
One way.
you'd have the tool you needed to fix something that
Danny,
So I was still looking out for myself.
you
there.
weren't using the Leatherman. You're like, let me
Right.
give it to Mo, somebody who really knows how to use it, and he'll
Yeah.
be able to fix my guitar strap one day.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which falls off occasionally.
Yeah. Like, who the fuck needs a star screw driver? Like, what?
So
Just use a Phillips.
for our other piece of gear, Danny, you want to tell us about the ARP Odyssey synthesizer that we just got?
Oh, yes. I didn't see that on there. The ARP Odyssey is a remake of the original ARP Odyssey. Korg bought the rights to the ARP name, and then they remade the ARP Odyssey, but they actually included the 3 different filter designs over the changes of the original ARP's life. And yeah, the ARP Odyssey was a kind of miniaturized version of the ARP 2600, which was a classic semi-modular synth. It was actually used as a learning synth to teach synthesis in colleges and stuff like that. And the ARP 2600 was a smaller version of the ARP 2500, which is, there's only 100 of those made.
The 2600 is smaller than the 2500?
Yes, yeah. And it's semi-modular. The 2500 is fully modular. Anyway, the point is, it's just a brand of synthesizer, an American brand of synth, and they came out following Moog and Buchla. They were a little later. They're more in like the ARP and the Korg days.
So we've been using this one, I'd say, probably the most out of a couple of the new synths that we've bought because we all just sat down in front of it. It's a monophonic synth or potentially duophonic. And it's got that magical sound that we keep using that word, but like
It does,
you
yeah.
sit in front of the speakers and make small adjustments to filters or whatever, and it just sounds so good that you kind of get sounds done quickly and you're happy and don't spend hours tweaking.
I think what sets it apart from some of the other ones is the way it looks. It's this little box that sits on the desk, and it's just basically got colored knobs and faders, but no keyboard or anything. So you feel like you're playing,
And
like
no
like
knobs.
the pilot let you into the cockpit, and you're just
Yeah, but they're those mini faders,
yeah.
there's no-
Well, they're all different colors, and it looks like candy. It's and you can move these things around and the sound changes, and it's very satisfying. It's like like a baby's toy in a way, because you don't really know what you're doing some of the time. But it's making a cool sound. That's very satisfying.
What's funny is that it was designed to make it a performance synth, because it's not very linear in the way the controls route it. Like on other synths, the signal path is quite logical. It comes in with your oscillator and then goes through your different paths into your filters and your envelopes and all that. And the ARP works the same way internally, but on the outside they move the faders around so that you could recall settings quickly in a live setting. So that's why it seems quite illogical. And then they've got some weird things like sample and hold. Yeah. But anyway, it sounds cool.
Yeah, we'll throw a link up to that and maybe some sound examples of that. And you'll definitely hear a lot of that on the new album that we are currently working on.
What is it like?
Give us a fucking sponsorship.
What is it like being in a band with your brothers? So I think you're probably the closest thing to a brother. This whole crew kind of became brothers over the last few years, but now
Definitely.
we're 4 actual brothers with a whole lot more brothers on the bus. Specifically, what?
Yeah, I mean, other than Gary, Moe is the closest brother.
Fuck Gary.
Wanted to.
I am more of a brother than Gary. Sorry, Gary Bear.
So what
can't
song?
endorse
I
that.
wanted to ask you, what songs do you guys fuck up on stage, and what songs do we always look side stage and see Moe there, and like he knows every mistake that we make, and whenever you make the mistake, you just turn and look at Moe like I know, I made a mistake.
Wait, so what songs do you guys mess up the most?
Yeah, and which ones do you watch, or have you watched us, or we're going to mess up? And I know the one that I often see you laugh at is Dylan. On Hands Up.
Hands Up, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you tell us, what's your favorite one to watch us fuck up?
That's pretty enjoyable. I like that one.
I Want It Free.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it, verse 3 or something? Like he cannot get right. Literally every other show is fucked up.
Yeah, well, you guys worked on that. I remember you guys working on that song, and it was a labor for sure. It didn't come out there was a lot of writers, and so I could see how, from a writing standpoint and then performing it, how it could be kind of, you have a lot of ideas in your head of what it could be.
Joey wrote most of the verses. Jesse wrote most of the choruses. Dylan and I contributed a couple lines to the verses, but Dylan and I and Johnny, sorry, I was saying Joey, listeners, I meant to say Johnny, we wrote maybe 3 or 4 different verses, right?
Right.
So that's all floating around in our heads, is the different versions of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's fun. And you guys started performing it pretty much right as you finished recording it, almost. It seemed virtually like that was
there
pretty
wasn't
close.
enough time for it to kind of
Sink in,
yeah.
Recording it, you were reading it to record it to kind of, because it was so fresh. And
I think it's one of the few songs where we've asked for lyrics on the stage, at least for a few gigs.
For a few gigs, we taped them to the monitors for a while.
It's weird. I don't sing that many songs, or maybe in a long set I'll sing 3 songs.
3 or 4 or 5 maybe.
Yeah. What do you fuck up?
What's that?
What do you fuck up? Nothing really.
Yeah.
I want to know guitar solo. That's what he fucks up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Sometimes you go a little high on that slide.
I'm a little bit out of it by that time, but I have to do little tricks with lyrics. I don't fuck up lyrics very much, but in order to remember the lyrics, I intentionally have to forget them. It's weird. You can't. If I try to think of what the lyric is,
if you think about them, it messes
right.
your brain
I have
up.
to. Yeah. So you have to get back into your body, because your body remembers. And if you try to, it's the same thing as trying to remember somebody's name. Who was that guy in that movie? It'll come to you when you don't think of it. The same thing. So it's a little skill you develop to get out of your own head.
Yeah, it's the concentration. For me, it comes about when a verse is coming up, and I start to feel that I'm not going to remember the words because they're not coming to me. And I start to kind of panic about, particularly Johnny's songs. I panic about the verses that I'm not, even Come With Me now. To this day, I still go to like the second verse. I'm like, fuck, want to fuck this one up again. And I actually have to go. I have to just remind myself. I mean, you sang this 250 times this year. You know what the lyrics are. Just forget about it. And this is actually a strange psychological phenomenon that I open my mouth and they come out completely automatically. I am not directing those lyrics. That's how kind of. That's how mechanical they've become.
Yeah.
And also in my defense, I do sing every song on the entire set, even if I'm not singing lead. I'm singing just about every word, singing a harmony or whatever, and that's a lot of lyrics.
No, yeah.
We're
being tough on him, but
feeling though because I only sing 2 songs, Repeat After Me and Birds Do It, and before every single set, I'm in the bathroom like reminding myself of the lyrics to repeat after me. Not that if I sang them wrong, I don't think anyone even noticed. I could just mumble blah 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 blah. Right. But yeah, that feeling of like panic
Just
that you're not going to remember it.
People in the bathroom. Yeah,
it's happened to you a couple times. Like, how does that feel when you're on stage and you know that you're going to fuck up a lyric? You know you're not going to remember it.
It's a terrible feeling. I feel like I'm actually dreaming, and this could not be happening. But it is.
What about the times you've fucked up where we've been on either TV performance or like a
radio
family event, and we have big thing on our set that says no cursing, and then the first line or
mechanical
first verse of the Come Together verse you do is gotta know
when to say fuck. And then you can curse on this, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who's the FDA? They were listening. Come on,
USDA.
Yeah, USDA.
That is quite ironic. The first lyric of the verse that you sing on Come Together is "Gotta know when to say fuck," and you literally don't know when you shouldn't say fuck. You're on you're on live radio or TV or something, and you go, "Gotta know when to say fuck." Oh, too late.
And I don't think in any of my other verses that we perform I curse.
Yeah, that's your one. You got to get it out. Well, one little inside joke we have is whenever I drop sticks, I try. Sometimes
that's what I wanted to get to. You dropping sticks.
Yeah, sometimes you don't notice, but usually you notice. And I always have an excuse. I rarely drop a stick for no good reason. A lot of times on a drum riser, or if it's not my kit, the cymbals move around, and then, I play with my eyes closed a lot. So I have this feel of where each drum should be, and then sometimes it catches a cymbal because the cymbal's not in the right place, and I blame everything but myself for dropping the stick.
Yeah, I mean, that's natural. As long as you go back and realize.
I've gotten pretty good I've got spare sticks at like several different locations that I can pull from. So if it's my left hand, I got a stick I can pull.
It's impressive how you jump back. I don't know how drummers do it, especially a singing drummer. There's a mic stand in front of your face. You have little room for error of swinging your arms and, getting the crowd into it and singing and hitting
Yeah, I think what's interesting is the crew has very similar feelings to the band when something goes wrong. If you're in the middle of a set, sometimes
maybe even worse.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that.
Because I feel like we take responsibility for it. We're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like Jesse dropped his stick, like fucking.
Or there's a couple times when like Chris hasn't tuned the bass properly or something like that. Or
we'll say Chris.
Yeah, we'll say Chris, just to throw someone else under the bus. But yeah, someone hasn't done something like that, and then the audience doesn't get to see that. But that's then the lashings that take place after the show that we have to discipline the crew.
Yeah, you guys are very fair, or maybe even fair isn't the right word, because if you were fair, you'd probably spank us or something.
Let's just cut this whole disciplining spanking section. This is fucking disgusting sounding.
There's been some really bad tuning moments, like where I've changed baritone strings. I remember in Russia, or was it Russia? Or Poland? It was one of the two. And we played this little small venue, and but it was for I'm Only Joking, and I handed you baritone. I just changed the strings. I thought I broken the strings, and you played it, and it was just like, it just sounded so bad. And I handed you your Strat back, and thank God you could play it on with that tuning. It just kind of didn't sit right in the mix on the Strat.
The only times we get kind of angry about screw-ups on stage is when all 4 of us have to look side stage to get your attention. Like what often happens is Jesse's microphone comes over his head and it's not taped properly, or like a snare goes out and it's like 12 bars go by before
don't
one
notice.
of you guys runs out. We're
Yeah.
like, fucking hell, guys.
Yeah.
Like, Jesse can't move. He's playing. All
Absolutely.
limbs are engaged.
No,
And he's singing.
we get it. It's tough. I mean, it's tough to. Sometimes it's just timing. We kind of have our respective areas that we look at, being
Yeah.
stage left, stage right, and where you are standing. You try to see the whole stage, but you can't see everything that happens, and you're not always in communication with front of house or monitors, which are two other great vantage points, and ears to hear if a mic hit the ground or something like that. And
those are the legitimate times that you miss something, and then there are some illegitimate times where you guys are simply chatting or
I rarely do that.
Snapchatting girls or something, and you miss
Not
the
my-
amp falls over and nobody
Well,
sees.
That was the funny one. We had Pano, who is a complete
Oh, yeah.
green guy, come out on tour with us for like a couple shows, and he was just backstage, like looking at the crowd, being excited to be
Taking
on
pictures of
stage.
you guys,
and
taking pictures of
eventually,
the
Mo
crowd.
said to him, like, "Dude, you need to be watching the guys, making sure nothing goes wrong." So the next show, he took that a little too far because he was like crouched behind Danny's amp, like staring at him, just to make sure nothing went wrong.
That first show, though, in Memphis, that was so bad. It was very, very windy. And I was just telling Jeff, our videographer, photographer, to not stand behind the video wall because the video wall was like swaying, 3 feet, and it was tied down already. So it was swaying 3 feet in both directions. And I was like, don't go back there. I would just watch out. It's a little sketchy. And as I'm talking to him, I hear this big thud, and Danny's amps had blown off the riser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just on their faces onto the stage. So that was pretty bad.
Yeah,
So-
that's what happens on the road. It's just going to be constant, things like that. That
Shit
you have to-
happens.
yeah, you get over it pretty quickly.
To throw myself under the bus, I mean, I did keep the amps in the wheels on the riser, and you never put wheels on wheels, Mick. That's for Mick. And,
Oh, we didn't know about that part, no.
Yeah. But, I mean, the wheels barely move if you push them, those wheels. So I thought, it would be fine, and it would make loadout easier. You can't do the show like that with that mentality, guys.
No.
Not a world-class manager move.
Are we going to go back to Deep Thoughts for a second here?
Yeah, let's close out this podcast with deep thoughts. Why don't you start with, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, because it was related to Danny's Namaste comment. People who say Namaste too much, and there's a lot of sort of memes online about the Namaste dude, or people who are blessed and just everything about them is blessed, and like they overuse that kind of spiritual language. And it just reminded me of I was in the pediatrician's office the other day with Eve, and everything's fine, nothing to worry about. But in LA, there's a lot of those Namaste people, and there was a guy who was literally wearing parachute pants. They were white, sort of silk parachute pants. And he had the exact right shoes and the right necklace and the hair and the beard and everything. And it made me think, it put me off. That kind of thing puts me off because I'm very interested in spiritual ideas. We all have that leaning and we care about those things to an extent. But when somebody sort of wears it like that, it bothers me. And so I had a discussion with Rachel about it, and we were trying to see, is that my problem? Is it my problem that this kind of thing puts me off? Or is it his problem or what? And I guess what I came to the realization was, and maybe you can agree or not agree, is it shouldn't preclude you from being a spiritual person what you wear. But the making a fashion statement that says, all I care is spirituality, that for me is what kind of puts me off. So I don't know, how do you guys feel about that?
There's a fine line for sure, I think, to make a statement with what you are wearing and, things you say. And then there's... it's definitely your problem that it bothers you, but I mean, I think it's probably leads.
That's a kind of general caveat. You can
Right.
always say that if something's bothering you and it's not like it's not a person who's actually
Physically
invading
punching
your,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's
But
ultimately what it is my problem. But I guess the question is, what is the purpose of fashion there's certain purposes of fashion where it's to attract the opposite sex or whatever, make a statement, and kind of that makes sense. You get it. You kind of take it for what it is. When that bleeds over into something that's supposedly of a higher nature, what purpose does fashion play in that?
I think the important question probably is whether the person is using fashion as a tool or whether they're being used by fashion. Like where that balance lies, because everyone understands that your outward appearance influences your life, and it can be used as a tool. But the minute it becomes a controlling force, where you are now obsessed with making this statement, and it's basically out of your conscious control, that's probably where it switches gears into a different thing. Like, there's like if for instance, a yoga teacher is probably going to have more clients and be able to have a more successful business and a more successful life if she or he plays the part a little bit. Because you don't want to go do yoga with a guy wearing like an Ed Hardy shirt. Or,
I think that it's the fashion aspect of it, this vanity aspect of it, is one of the biggest, I don't like using the word, but it's like one of the biggest evils of the kind of spirituality word, especially like the word namaste. Is just been completely degraded, where it literally means like the divine in me honors the divine in you, or the light in me. It's a greeting when you greet someone. And there was a company that started, a yoga company, a clothing company that started a line of shirts that said "Namaste bitches" on it. And it was, it's that type of thing. Like, I'm not a big fan of getting into the cultural appropriation argument or anything like that. It's none of that stuff really gets to me, but something about that really does rub you the wrong way when you see a word that is supposed to be very deep and it has a very strong meaning, and especially for a lot of people, and then just to put bitches after it. It's just like it completely defeats the purpose of the word, entirely.
Well, I think defining yourself by what you wear, or defining yourself to yourself or to other people by what you wear, is just cause for I could go a few different directions here, but cause for introspection, and just should take a look at what else is going on there besides your parachute pants or your chain wallet.
Well, it's something you can do the opposite of it,
category.
though.
They're practical.
It makes sense.
I think you can do the opposite of it, like people that you are so obvious to look that they're obsessed with the way that they look. I think, have sometimes fallen into the trap of like, now we're playing the part of the person who doesn't care.
Right, that's what I would say. Is like the way you look is not limited to the clothing you choose. Or whatever, or the fact that you make an unfashionable or modest choice is also coming from the same place as a person making a fashionable choice.
Well, I'm going to expand on your thought, because remember we watched that clip of I think it's David Mitchell, the British comedian. He's on this TV show. This is one of my favorite YouTube clips of all time. It's a game where they guess whether you're telling the truth or not. And one of the statements was David Mitchell saying something like, I like being unremarkable in what I wear, but not so unremarkable that in itself becomes remarkable. And he goes and explains his thinking.
Noteworthy.
Noteworthy.
Yeah.
And I just loved it, because that's kind of how I feel about fashion. Most people feel that fashion is an expression, and I'm not above fashion. I like cool clothes, and it's part of being in a rock band, and it's part of the whole thing. So I'm not that attached or unattached to it, but I don't believe ultimately that fashion is an expression of yourself. I believe that it is it covers up ultimately what you have inside yourself,
concealment,
and it's a concealment of yourself. So that's how I feel. I
think what Moe said though is actually quite true. Is that it is your problem that it bothers you. It's not the other person's problem that it bothers you, and you have to recognize what it is that. And I know I'm contradicting myself after I just said how something bothers me so much, but you have to also then analyze what it is that is bothering you. And it's usually stemming from perceiving some
similarity.
You're perceiving
hypocrisy,
insincerity.
Jesus, you're perceiving insincerity in someone else, and that is a reflection of also your own insincerity. And I think that at times when you're blind to your own insincerity, you can now look at someone else and put all of that, all of your perception on someone else being insincere and not recognizing the insincerity in yourself.
Everyone's a judgy dick. And when you put on something that is, you know, if you're not just, you're in your own skin with all your imperfections, your hair and your genitals, and you're just walking around
That
nude.
escalated quickly.
I'm just saying, if you're not just wearing...
This is your nudist
I'm not saying
thesis,
wearing
yeah.
skin. I'm not saying it. If you're not just walking around in your natural body, you're going to be judged on what you put on top of your natural body.
Like
Because
Hannibal Lecter,
it's a
that guy
choice.
always gets judged for wearing other people's skin. Yeah, and I don't. It doesn't.
I do
Your
like
internal
clothes.
state seems to be what you're saying is important.
Yeah, look, I mean, I ultimately came to the realization, as I do with everything, that every problem I have with somebody or something else or something outside of myself ultimately is a reflection, a sort of mirror image of some self dissatisfaction. You know, if you see hypocrisy in somebody else, it's because it is linked and is triggering an awareness of hypocrisy within your own self, and that's if you can kind of come to that realization, then that's how you let go of judgment. That's how which is the important part, is that maybe the judgment is a trigger. It's there for a reason. You judge something, as long as that leads to
Reflection.
a sort of self-examination, then it's a good result. The judgment has a good result, because if you can let go of it or at least see the same characteristic in your own self, then that's a positive thing.
Yeah,
I always
the
find it
impulse
funny. Oh, go ahead.
The impulse for judgment, without that, everything would be the same and would appear the same when it clearly isn't, and you would not be able to make important judgments for yourself about the way that you want to act or speak or talk or whatever. So that, like you're saying, it's the impulse for the judgment, and the initial judgment itself is not the problem. It's when you think that's the end of the picture.
Yeah.
It's the fact that judgment has to then self-reflect.
Well, isn't that good kind of microcosm of it when the vitriol that's directed towards certain kinds of criminals, you know, the more depraved the criminal after a certain threshold, the less vitriol they get, because people go into this different state where they say something's wrong with that person. Something must have happened to them. They got corrupted, maybe at a very young age. But the more moderate criminals, they're very relatable. So people tend to direct a lot of vitriol towards them, and they actually offer more understanding towards these really depraved people, because maybe it doesn't reflect as much in them. You know, if somebody's a really depraved criminal, it doesn't
Can't
really
relate.
Yeah, it's not. It's clearly there's something wrong. There's something wrong with that person. They who knows what happened to them? You know, I don't know. We're getting into a whole fucking moral thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's just something you do to cover your body. You know, it's just, as far as fashion goes, it's just something that covers your body.
Yeah, I was talking about fashion criminals. People just break. You know, you should never wear blue and black. It's horrible.
But I think it's funny that people feel one way or another about it, but it just kind of happens naturally. I used to wear clothes that did not fit me at all in our first years of touring. I wore clothes that were just handed down to me. I didn't find pants that had the right length or waist size. I just kind of threw them on, and I had this very it's just clothes. It's fine if it doesn't match, or, you know, but then I kind of went to the other end and said, you are presenting yourself to the world, so maybe just be presentable,
Especially,
at least.
especially in the entertainment industry. I mean, it clearly serves a purpose, and if you're not utilizing it, then you better be fucking talented and amazing. You better be the best at what you do. Then people will forgive your bad-fitting jeans, you know.
But it goes to the other end of the spectrum where, you know, people are using fashion to speak for them, you know. So you can kind of not care at all, which means you do care. You could sit in the middle and kind of just be presentable and be approachable in one way or another, or go to the other end and let your fashion speak for you, so you don't have to say anything, which is just.
But you see, that's what it ultimately comes down to, because no one's talking shit about Miles Davis and how obsessed with fashion he was, and like, oh,
it's cool.
Dude, why you?
I think it's
all
art.
he does is change outfits. Because if you wanted to, you could talk shit about Miles Davis, because he's one of the most fashionable dudes ever. He also was Miles Davis, who was one of the most influential
heroin addicts ever.
Musicians ever. So you weren't focusing on that, but he clearly used it as a tool. But there are artists that you see where it's easy to pick on them because it doesn't.
You guys are limiting the discussion of fashion to clothing, but fashion
course,
exists in ideas. It
but-
exists in everything. It exists.
Well, it brings up the question of what is an expression? What is it to be original? And I've almost come to the conclusion that being original and having an actual original expression is one of, if not the most difficult thing a human can ever do. It's to do something.
You're not the first person to say that.
Clearly,
How original.
to do something from that stems purely from yourself, whatever that means, and not because of some other external influence or your conditioning as a kid or whatever whatever you learned or imitated, is an incredibly difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
so what is an expression?
Well, you can bring it. I remember I had a 9th grade biology teacher, and the definition of life was cellular life that reproduces. And I said, okay, that I understand that as, cellular life. Life is defined as cellular life, but like in a non-scientific classification, a virus could be defined as life. It's this thing which replicates in other cells and so on. And he said, no, it needs a host. It's not life. And I said, I understand, scientifically you have to define life as a certain thing, and, a virus is not life.
Danny hates teachers, by the way.
I hate teachers. And I said, but, just as an intellectual idea, what is life? Like when does life begin? Because this virus has so many properties that other life has, and it replicates. And he said, no, it's not life. It needs a host. And the immediate analogy you draw is like, well, yeah, if I dropped you in fucking space, you'd die too. Like, what doesn't need a host? What doesn't need some context? So, is this related to your original thought thing?
No,
I think
fashion needs a host.
I think it's related because I think nothing happens in a vacuum, including a thought. So,
yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to end, because we should just end with hashtag what is life, spelled W-E...
Baby, don't hurt me.
W-U-T, what is life?
Yeah. Let's end it here.
Yeah.
Mo, always a pleasure. We'll have you back, I'm sure, and we'll do a couple of these on the bus.
Thanks for the job. Appreciate it. Dylan, the eggs and the bitter greens were delicious. Thank you.
Dandelion greens. That's what they were.
Now
Very
get
good.
back to work.
Yeah. Time to
All right,
organize.
guys. Thanks for listening. Go to kongos.com/podcast to subscribe, and check us out on Google Play. Make sure you're subscribing on those things. Like, click the subscribe button. It helps us out. See you guys next week.
What's your Instagram, Mo?
Moe Gordon Music.
Okay.
Cool.
M-O,
Yeah, we'll put all
not
the links to
M-O-E.
Mo's stuff up there.
See you guys next week.
Bye.